I will tell you right now that, and Ben can confirm this, the original book, so I developed This Is Not a Test as a love letter to the hometown that I grew up in, Cumberland, Maryland. The Apocalypse Decisions was based on living there for 20 years before I moved away, and just my childhood and the local flora and fauna. And so basically, as far as like world canon goes, I laid claim to that area. That's actually in the book saying I own this part of the world, right? When you play in this part of the world, if you're going to DC, Lower Pennsylvania, Upper Virginia, um, Eastern West Virginia, that is where my game takes place. That is where the factions will have specific names. And then the rest of the world, I see to the players. Out front, I just said, I might give you broad swaths, but I cannot. If you these gentlemen in Texas, I can't write a techless supplement that'll make them happy.
Right.
I mean, really, and I say this now, but I know I'm kind of lying to you, right? Like, I know that if I do a supplement that's kind of like the Texas Rangers, right? If I ever do like a desert supplement, we're going to talk about Texas a little bit. And maybe they'll be like, well, maybe I mentioned the Texas Rangers, but I'm not going to go super granular that I did for the area where the base game is set. I'm going to give you some generic trope. I like playing with tropes. I mentioned this word a lot when I'm designing TNT. Like, one of the things I really want to do with Florida, and I really want to do, I want Disney World. I want intercontinental coastal pirates. That's one of my favorite concepts, is that people don't know that along the East Coast, there is a byway of water that runs up the entire length of the coast that is inside the coast itself. So you can ships go up and down. It's called the Intercoastal Highway. It's like the Intercoastal Highway or something. And I just love the idea of pirates roaming, right? That area, coming on shore, and then also like gators and swamps and stuff. And I want to play with all that, because you can't have that in the tri-state wasteland. There's no alligators, right?
Right.
We have scorpions. That was kind of like where I just wanted scorpions, so they're in there.
Yeah.
Gotcha. There are these concepts that I really want swamp boat Vikings. Like, I just want Vikings in the swamp hanging out.
Sounds awesome.
I'm in for swamp boat Vikings, 100%.
Same.
Because I bought a role playing game a long time ago that was like Bjork in the Bayou or something. And I was like, oh my god, is there Viking pirates in this game? And I was like, oh no, it's just so it was like no, it's called Bjorn in the Bayou.
Oh. And
I was like, oh my god, like, can you imagine like boats with like the dragon heads on them?
Oh yeah,
and like cool. Just like these guys coming out of the swamps, and for some reason they're Vikings. Like, I don't need a good reason for it, and I want to do rules for them someday. And I'm going to mention swamps, right? But I'm not going to define Florida as much as I would other regions. So, to kind of tying into, so how does that mechanically work? I would like to do. I actually been thinking about this more. Is like regional, the hazards, or the hazards of the waste. I would like to do more regional versions of that. So I would say like, I could do like Southern United States version, West Coast version. So you would have like, what is it like hanging out and playing a game in the swamp? What is that like? Maybe you do need some type of swimming rules or war bands that work more. They get the swimming ability, right? But you need to play a scenario that has water. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
I haven't toyed with it too much. I know that when I did the big book of scenarios, again, I don't remember names. I'm sorry, a gentleman, whoever wrote it, did a really cool base building scenario. Like, it was like down to like buying razor wire, and when you like play the terrain with your base, and you have to lay it out specifically where it said. And I do like that idea. I don't have immediate plans for that just yet. I know there are other Wasteland games that hardcore dive down into that because they're trying to get you that video game feel, and that's a very important part of the video game. And I'm not necessarily chasing that gameplay loop.
Yeah.
So, will there be some point of base building? I want to do a big campaign book that will function in there in some way. Probably not as hardcore as people want it to be, but I do like the idea of being able to build like special terrain that like you can use for special scenarios, and like the idea of like you have an armory where you keep all your crap, and people can steal it.
That'd be
you know, and they're like, okay, well, you know, maybe you do have like not your base space, but your forward base. You're like, all right, we live in this gas station. We'll fortify it a little bit. Maybe the cover saves get a little better in certain parts, and maybe you have like a crazy robot you just let wander around or something. Ideas like that could be fun, but that's one of those future expansions. I wouldn't expect that for at least a year. Yes, Remnant Gangs were a creation of a good friend of mine who when we first started, he really enjoyed writing content. And again, good friend of mine. And I was not interested in so a Remnant Warband is essentially, it is imagine that a group of warbands have got together against a common foe. It could be and you generally line the order of like good and evil, or civilized versus uncivilized. So it's like raiders and outcast mutants form an alliance to defend themselves from being overtaken, and it went bad for them. Right? They were wiped out, and they all scattered to the four winds. And a remnant warband are these coming together. It's like almost like combining three warbands together, and you get to choose the option of each. So you have to pick a leader. So it's like 50% is the main warband, and the other 25% is from two others. So it does give you some cool like converting and just kind of some extra options for designing your warband. But it was not, and I included those in the Kickstart the Wasteland supplement. So it was never something that I like wrote myself. No, I did help develop it, and I still like the idea. They're kind of like, if I had to be honest with you, if I was looking at things that I want to bring back quickly and that are top of the list, they're pretty low on that list. Just because I have like robots and mutant cannibals, and I have some other warbands in my head that I would really like to get out quicker.
Yeah, so it's not out of the question, but right now there's things.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you could. I honestly, because there's no stats with that warband, right? I honestly don't think you need to change anything. You could just play the remnants as is. I don't remember specifically what I know. I don't think they get anything. Yeah, I don't think they have anything super unique to them. It was just more of you could pull choices from three warbands.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I tell people, nothing is outdated in theory, right? If this existed in a power supplement, just tweak it a little bit. I mean, everything. I mean, this isn't a competitive game, right? We're this is a narrative focused game, so everything's opponent's permission anyway. Like, please develop your own stuff. Please, if you really want to, if you like the idea of the Remnant Warbands, I think they're a cool concept. I think if I were to revisit them, I think they should be designed with their own campaign. Like, you would almost like, I'd like them force players to play a normal campaign, and if they ever get their ever warband ever actually gets wiped out, it might actually be kind of cool. Like, oh no, you got to play a remnant now, right? Or just something like that. Just something very narrative focused would be really kind of fun. But the hard answer to the question is, I don't have immediate plans for remnant warbands. They still mostly work. If I ever do a book that is solid, just warbands, that would be a good place to include them, just as a kind of extra.
Yeah.
I'm going to give people a list of the warbands that are in the book, though. So we have caravanners, we have mutants, we have raiders, we have preservers, we we have tribals, and then we have peacekeepers. Those are the core warbands that are in
Give
the
us
book.
like
And then after that, there was also all of the Wasteland weirdos as well.
And before you get to those, I would like to mention then that within those warbands, there's usually 2 different leader options that change how the warband works. So
yes, they have a lot of the thing that I've really just discovered, or I guess rediscovered, working on the layout as I've gone through, is there's a lot of choice even within these like warband archetypes that I think a lot of people could find, the format to fit whatever trope they want to go for. And I won't list off all the Wasteland weirdos, but there is more of them in this book, right? Than
there's
the original.
like 23.
There's a lot. It's the one part of the layout I've temporarily skipped over that because I've laid out the first couple to get the page count set in and the styling set in.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I think I might skip ahead to the special rules for a little bit, give myself a change of pace because it's like a lot. I was like, there's a lot of them in there because that's one part of the book I really want to try and make them really unique.
Because I really wanted warbands to have a lot of variance, a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
And just and in under the old rules, they just counted as an additional elite. They were kind of rare and nobody took them. And I was like, no, I want you to be able to take me. See, also, like, with the Wasteland Weirdos, you don't need remnants as much as you used to. Because if you really just wanted to take a big mutant, now you just can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an option in the Weirdos. Lobbed criticism at me is that the warbands are a lot of them aren't a hard counter to each other. My game relies less on rock, paper, scissor, as in like you want to play the fast, hard hitting warband. Well, you have to play Raiders because that doesn't exist in any other list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's simply not true. You have more options for that in the Raider warband, but you can kind of tailor any warband because you have complete free choice on skill choice, within exceptions, but like you can take any weapon, right? So there's no limits on what weapons people can carry. So you really can choose how, like, because I always wanted to tell people, if you have a big dumb mutant and you really want to give him a sniper rifle, hey, I'm not going to tell you no.
I mean, it could be a big sniper rifle,
Yeah. Is it going to work mechanically? No, I don't care though. It just looks cool, right?
Yeah.
It just looks cool, yeah.
So, like, I know, like...
I think the interesting point that I would add too is as I was working on the miniatures, the black site miniatures, like using the peacekeepers is a really good example of like, Joey's original peacekeepers are based on, what are they based on? The state troopers?
State troopers, yeah.
Whereas I went for more like city cops with like the peaked hats and stuff, and it's like even within the warband styles, you can tweak them so much. I think that you can find your own sort of like.
And really, I wanted you to define the aesthetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I give you, here are some classes, and like so, like I've always gone back and forth on how if I wanted to write a game, like you'll take an old school game like Mordheim, right? Those warbands are 100% all different from each other, right? You play undead. You are getting zombies. You are getting zombie wolves. You are getting a vampire, a guy to serve the vampire, and that's it, right? You have like 5 options. And if you want to play anything else, you either have to go to the expanded material. That's it, right? And that is a blessing and a curse. It is a blessing because when you play undead, you know exactly how the undead play. You know what models you need, and you kind of have a big feel for how that warband works. But on the other side, you do lose your ability to customize things more or how they look. And so that's why, in TNT, every warband has a model, has a grunt model, a low-level model. That's just the same stat block, right? They're all the same because it's the guy that exists in the wasteland who has left the comfort of civilization, and he's but he's not great, right? But maybe he survived the battle, so he's got completely. There's always the guys with just average stats, right?
Right.
And they exist in every warband, and they're there because that's kind of like that's the bulk of your people, right? That's the people they're either dead or I don't know. It's just in my head, so that's how that informed warband designs. Where I didn't want this super delineated process of you have 6 options in warband and that's it. Like I think most warbands have like 8 to 12. And I know that sometimes the only difference between models stat wise is their skill choices. But well, they have to but you can start with those skills you start with, right? So that's where I kind of like how warbands are a little different. Where even if it's like there's not this great variance and stat variance, because again it's a D10 game. It's not like I can't go super crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Like everybody when you're rolling a D10 plus a stat, you're going to go somewhere between 4 and 6. Mm-hmm. Anything else is just just too predictable. Gotcha. So that's always informed how warbands are designed for me. Yes, that is in the scenarios. I got taken to task in playtesting on about terrain density. So I don't go into hardcore detail. I know there are games like Warcry where people love that you can draw cards and it tells you specifically where the terrain should go. And I do know that is that is an interesting way of doing it. Basically the way I give you, I forget how I have in the book, but it's basically when you're designing a board, it's like you want 2 large line of sight blockers, really. So you can't. So there. I would say 2 large pieces, and then like 4 to 8 scatter. So you got some concealing terrain, and then you have some pretty big line of sight blockers. And I'm hoping when you see the pictures in the book, we'll give you some like terrain setups because the original TNT had those in the back of like table. There's some table layouts, and I really will give you a flavor, an understanding of the flavor of terrain. I like more terrain than not. I don't like empty tables. Yeah. I'm here like 95% of wargaming for the terrain. So that's like my favorite part of it is just like I'm like if I'm doing something hobby related, it is always terrain of some type.
Yeah.
So
as
like,
you answered the call today, working on a piece of terrain.
Yeah, working on some Hamatsu actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think making really cool, compelling tables is always fun, and I think so. The book will have some guidance on terrain density for the scenarios, but it's not going to be like
telling
as
you
rigid as
you need 3 by 3 inches, and you need 5 of those.
Yeah,
and that goes back to it's not a competitive game. Like you're not going to play TNT for money.
Competitive games. Like, you need that level.
Yeah,
like you need that, right? And I mean, I have seen terrain manufacturers make tournament terrain, right? It's like it is 6 inches tall. It is 3 inches deep. It looks like you just took a building, sawed it in half, and put it out because that's how it blew up. But and where for me, where I the terrain is half the battle. I grew up going to games days for Games Workshop and seeing the beautiful tables. Like, I want to play on that table. I don't give a shit how bad my army does. It looks awesome, right? Like I am not interested. Like no. Like army performance. No.
Just you're there for the spectacle of it.
I'm for the spectacle is how I would describe it. Yep. Okay, so I think I get the intent of this question. There is hands down the most popular scenario for TNT is the zombie one, and the
zombies, man.
Pest control. And it's funny is because this is the most we were talking about solo play and cooperative play, right? It's a scenario where zombies are popping out of nests and you get to shoot them. And it's kind of a fun scenario because you're like, okay, we just played some rough. We just went at each other hardcore, but now it's kind of like we can still shoot at each other, but we don't necessarily have to. So I think
work together.
I think people do enjoy that cooperative element of that scenario? And the answer to that question is yes. There's a now upper level version of that scenario called The Creature in the Woods. No, it's called The Creature in the Wastes because it's an homage to the original Creature in the Woods Mordheim scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two critter nests, and these more powerful creatures come out. They can kill you, and it's a combination scenario where you're trying to kill them and take their heads for to get money, and you're trying to blow up their nests. So yes, there are more options for randomly running into creatures as a result of the wasteland table. The critters of the waste. I forget the name of the actual table for when you roll for critters of the waste. Not really. As a completely random thing that can happen, I think I kept it at about the same, but there are more scenarios that use critters. So, and that's one of those things where when I want to do more scenario design and more campaign, where we're going to go into like just special scenario rules where there's going to be more stuff to interact with, right? There's going to be more specific critters because I've been really I've been mentioning Hamatsu a lot. I've really been very inspired by Doug's rules. I really like having the non-player character aspect of it. I do enjoy that more, and I've seen that done in a lot of war games and I think because there's a lot of critters, and there's a lot of there's just like between critters and robots, there's a lot of play space for fun scenarios for that kind of thing. So that's definitely something that will be in future supplements.
I think this is in reference to you.
I made the joke
offering
about
up your favorite dinosaur.
Favorite dinosaur.
Stegosaurus?
Stegosaurus is clearly my favorite dinosaur.
So what's your least favorite then?
Can a man have a least favorite dinosaur?
Doesn't
not
one with warm blood?
I don't know. I feel like I should know the answer to that. Anything that's not a triceratops that looks like a triceratops.
so
there's so many overboards with crazy crest things, and I'm like, that's not no, that's got the guy with the one horn and the big frill. I don't hate them, but they're like, you think you're a triceratops, but you're not.
Discount triceratops. Anything that's a discount
triceratops.
Yeah, okay. They're everyone's least. They don't even have real names. They're just known as not the triceratops ones.
It is not. BRUTL is its own. I don't even know if it's in the same universe as my Cyberpunk game. It is just its own universe.
It is just doing its own thing. Little tank battles out in the tank wasteland.
Yeah, it's tank combat for the masses.
Yeah,
it is just its own world.
Always there's there was some off-brand tank game that I played, some computer off-brand tank game that I played when I was like 12 or something, and it was just like a bunch of tanks over the world, and there was no buildings, there wasn't really any signs of people. It was just like as if the small world was run by tanks. And that's kind of what I've
It's actually funny. It's actually funny because BRUTL has its own world. There's tank fighting and there's tank arenas, and it exists along the East Coast. You can go and there's teams, and so I've never written more than I needed to for that world.
Yeah.
What else?
It knows exactly what it is.
That is very easy.
Okay.
Ties go to the attacker. My old game philosophy was if you get a tie, that should protect you, right? You should be like, got lucky. You're like, oh my god, I got a tie, thank you. But then I started hanging out with Mike Hutchison, and he has his rules of carnage, and that is if something should happen, if we're playing a game, it's a cinematic experience, shit should happen, and someone not dying is way less interesting than somebody dying. So now I'm like, you know what? If you're attacking, and we'll see, the old school TNT also had the problem of if you had two models that were averagely similar. So they had, like, say you had two guys with a club, and they both had a melee stat of 4. And given, how the bell curve of the D10 and, well, the way the D10 worked, you could very often, they'd be like, hit, 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 hit. Nothing happens for 3 turns.
Right.
I'm like, that was like, oh, I need to fix. That was like a big problem with the old school TNT. That I was like, it wasn't like it didn't break the game. I was like, well, so then I was
You
like,
kind of
you know
just
what?
want stuff to happen
I want
more
stuff to
than
happen.
it doesn't.
Cool
Yeah.
stuff should happen. So I'm like,
Yeah.
nope. Now it's, and also like that encourages you to attack.
Yeah.
You know what? You may get lucky, like, right? And there's, and and I didn't, so yeah, that I would say that's the biggest difference. Is, I mean, you could also fold that under the umbrella of that combat is a lot more deadlier, and there's more options in combat now, in close combat. So, but I would say the biggest difference is ties go to the attacker.
A lot of games are like that.
Yeah, it's
And
like,
that was my thinking, right?
Yeah.
It was just always been like, no, you should, that you got lucky. You're like, as a player defending,
it makes sense. Like having 4 rounds where you're like, okay, well, I've survived 4 times in a row. That makes less sense than I got like 1 hit on the first round.
I mean,
because
that
of
is
the tie,
cinematic.
Well, it's cinematic, but it's
to a degree.
If you're around for the spectacle, it's not a spectacle necessarily.
Right.
Like,
but yeah, it's fun if you're the player whose guy is surviving in all odds. And I mean, that still exists because there's now the counterattack rule, where if you roll a critical while defending, you get to immediately attack back. Like, that kind of crazy shift still exists in the new rules.
Right.
But I definitely just like, I don't know, and I've gotten some pushback on it because there's a type of player who includes me of where I don't want my guys to die, right? When
you have
I
a
play
heart for them.
What it's not even that they're like I care for them. It's just, if I'm playing a real-time strategy game, I'm turtling as much as possible. I'm building as many walls, and I don't want stuff. I am not that type of player. I'm very risk averse.
Right.
I think is like, I don't like, I'm not, I will never play a Zerg Rush. I just can't imagine just like the person who discovered that idea that you just rush forward and just stop, you just catch him with his underwear down, right? I'm like, oh my God, I can't, like, no. So I gotta take, I'm all my guys are behind cover, can I afford some armor? Perfect. What skills can I give them that keep them around longer? Like, I gotta protect my boys. Instead of like, they're just models. We're playing a war game. They're gonna die. It's okay. It's okay, man.
He's prepping himself in the mirror in the bed.
No, that's why I'm like, no. Even if it's your own guys dying, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
You gotta come to the table ready to, like.
Sometimes you just gotta let the carnage happen, I
mean, the strength of TNT is I've lost entire war bands, and I come back to the table, and if I'm not the same, my warband is better, just because experience and money. And I did lower the death rate a little bit. I did make it TNT's a little nicer now, like, so it's not as hardcore death as it used to be, by about a 10%. So don't get excited. It's still deadly.
Yeah,
it was a slight shift in the survival table, only because I didn't want, losing a model kind of sucks. So, but, and I wouldn't describe it as there's the idea of feel bad.
Yeah.
Where something happens and it's like, well, that served no narrative purpose and just kind of sucks, right? Yeah. I don't want those, but I'm still like, just because a guy died doesn't mean it's a feel bad moment, right? Like,
right.
It's a combat game. People are going to get killed,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of it.
The dice sucked, it happens. Yeah. You just got to come in, ready to have fun. And I'm like, I was playing a cowboy game the other day, and I had a guy dead to rights, and I swear to God, didn't die.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, my gun missed 2 shots, and then my gun jammed. All right, awesome. And I'm like, you know what? Then I'm like, he's like, I'm like, oh shit, it's just in my head. I'm like, that's still kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And as long as you're not playing dicks, who are like, ha 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 ha, right?
Yeah, as long
The
as
guys who,
everyone's
like,
being
really
a good
enjoy
sport
too
about
much
it.
when the dice go against you, but it's still like there's still narrative opportunities for fun, even if you're not winning. I am old, and I prefer forums a lot, but they really don't exist anymore. I'm more on Facebook. If you want to reach me, posting in the Facebook group is the best place. I like Facebook more because you can capture and search conversations. Because it's like it archives itself, right? You can go and search. Where Discord, somebody asks a great question, and then I give a great answer, and it's gone. It still exists, but you got to scroll for it. And Discord is great for having chats. But it's not great for long conversations, and that's why I just have a preference for Facebook. I'm not in the Discord as much as I'd like because of that reason. But I am in there every couple of days. So if I see something, let me respond to him. The answer is both, but if you had to pick one, I like Facebook.
Yeah, we'll put a link for both of them below for people.
Yep.
I'm going to second that, is do not wait, because you will miss out. It is very important. We have this every single time a backroom closes. We get an email within 24 hours being like, I didn't know, I would need to put my pre-order in. You'll miss out. It'll be, the book will most likely be available for late pre-order until, during fulfillment, but we switch off all of the other products, and you'll just have to wait until early next year. So if you are on the fence about this, at least get the book, support the project, and you will not regret it.